We're two best friends who want to help kick off your weekend. I'm Carla Marie.
And I'm Anthony. We're going to set the tone for your weekend with our My Day Friday podcast.
Listen and subscribe on the iHeartRadio app, at Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And the Ad Council.
This is Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health, the show that exists to help you get healthier and live longer. I am your host, Dr. David Vitko, a chiropractic physician with over 30 years experience in helping your friends and loved ones live healthier and less painful and potentially longer lives. You know, there's only so much we can do about that. But, eating a better diet and living more healthfully has been demonstrated to increase that living potential. And so we need to think about that and we need to act on it. So I don't know what made me think of it this morning, but, I get deep in thought sometimes. And, I'm working on a book, and that you spend a lot of time alone when you're doing that, and it's hard to focus exactly 100% of the time. So, you get lost in thought and things. But this morning I was in the office early, and, every day when I look around at the news, the local, the national, the world news, I'm struck by the amount of cruelty that exists in the world. Humans are cruel to each other. We're cruel to animals. It's sad, really. It really is. If aliens ever come here, I'm sure we'll be cruel to them, too. It seems to be human nature. But we are better than that. As cruel as the world is, what strikes me most is how cruel we are to ourselves simply by the foods that we eat day in and day out, the foods that we put into our body. How is that cruel? Well, that sets us up for a lot of pain and suffering and future misery. And I know a lot of people have not made the connection between one and the other, but it is very strong. And I've got a guest today that is going to help me kind of draw that out a little bit, and we're going to talk more about that. And can't wait to get him on. We're going to have Dr. David Katz on in just a few minutes. But think about it. We inflict more misery on ourselves by the way we eat, actually, than what is going on in the world. And the misery that we have that is self-inflicted, we can stop that. And we can also kind of quell what's going on in the world simply by good acts. We all need to work at spreading kindness. So do something. I know you've heard me say this before, and everybody thinks, oh, he's like a do-goody guy. But listen, you do something nice for somebody today, and you'll be amazed at how that spreads. Honestly, I try to do that every day, and I really believe in that. So, quick commercial. If you know anyone who would like to build reliable health in their body and perhaps become healthy enough to get off medications with their doctor's blessing, have them call me or call my office for a consultation and find out how we can help them. The phone number is 330-482-9550. That's 482-9550. Same phone number I've had for over 30 years. And I'm always happy to sit down and talk to you about helping you to get healthier. And that's about all the advertising you're going to hear from me today, other than our rotation commercials. We have a terrific show for you today, folks. My friend, Dr. David Katz, I'd like to call him my friend. I think I know him pretty well by now, just from emailing him back and forth and having him on the show. He's a medical doctor who truly knows a lot about diet and how it affects health. And he's back to share some more wisdom with us today. So I'm thrilled to have Dr. Katz back on the show. Truly, folks, he is one of the few leaders in healthcare that I follow because he recognizes the foundations of real health lie in your diet and your diet and lifestyle. So, plus he tells it like it is. So I'm going to bring him on right now. Good morning, Dr. Katz.
Thanks for the kind intro, David. Great to be back with you.
Oh, you heard that. I didn't think you could hear that. I'm sorry about that. I don't mean to give you a big head. Honestly.
I heard that. I liked every word of it. Thanks.
Well, look, honestly, there are only a handful of doctors that I can give credit to for getting my health to the point it is now. And I shouldn't say this because I'll probably get a bill from you and from them here pretty soon then. But honestly, my health today is a tremendous turnaround from what it was even just 10 years ago. And it is a process, and I've done it kind of straight as the crow flies, as they say, and it's been back and forth. And I wish I had known when I started what I know now. And but I give you some of the credit for that, and a few other really great leaders that I'm sure you know these guys if I went through the names, but I won't. But so welcome to the show.
Well, I bet I do know them, and I appreciate the kind words. I'm delighted to hear about your health. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's sort of where my whole career began, David. I trained in internal medicine, which, basically is, learning how to take care of adults who get sick. And, during the residency training, you're in the hospital 100+ hours a week taking care of people sick enough to be in a hospital bed. And that was exactly the revelation during that crucible of training. Wow, most of these people who are so terribly sick, and we're doing the best we can to keep them alive and try and get them better, but, we'll never get them fully better, and they never needed to get so sick in the first place 8 times in 10. Sometimes stuff just happens, but most of the time it's predictable. Most of the time it's lifestyle related, and that's why I went on to train in preventive medicine and lifestyle medicine, because that really is where the great power to fundamentally alter our medical destiny resides.
Well, you stole some of my thunder today, because that's what I was going to ask you, is where your motivation came from. I think everybody that kind of goes down this path and discovers their own health can be much better has some point at which a light switch is turned on, and you say, well, wait a minute, it's that thought. Now, you are traditionally trained in medicine, and so that's a huge light switch for you. That's a big difference because it is contrary in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No. And so, maybe I got there a little earlier. It's interesting. We're having this conversation now, 2019, and lifestyle medicine is huge. I'm a past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. That organization has been doubling, tripling, and quadrupling in size every year since I was president 5 years ago. And it's spawning sister organizations around the world. It's a movement whose time has come, but back in the day, we weren't really there yet. So, my motivation, as so many motivations are, David, was, I guess, a bit selfish in the beginning. I was interested as a kid in exercise and fitness, and then I became interested in nutrition as the fuel for all of that. So it was very personal for a while. But then I went to medical school and, learned to be a doctor. And then I went on into internal medicine. Of course, you carry your personal interest with you wherever you go. So it was really the juxtaposition of being very committed to good nutrition and fitness and essentially cultivating vitality in my own life, and spending all of my time vocationally with really sick people. And as I said, we were learning how to do our best to keep people from dying, right, and intervening when people were acutely ill, and spending time on the medical ward in the ICU. And frankly, that would be enough. And it is, I want people to know, speaking as a physician, it's an incredible privilege to be trained to be a doctor, to be that person there in those moments of greatest, most acute, most dire need. It's an incredible privilege. And so, I've never thought of the profession of medicine as anything other than, when it's practiced right, it's truly honorable and a deep privilege to do it. But still, I kept getting distracted by the big picture. So I was taking care of sick people one at a time, but the big picture was, most of these people have heart disease, and most of this heart disease doesn't need to happen. And a lot of these people have lung disease, and that's all tobacco-related, and most of that never needed to happen. And some people have infectious diseases related to behavioral choices that didn't need to happen. And a lot of these people have type 2 diabetes, which is almost completely preventable with lifestyle, and on it went. And I thought, wow, I sort of feel like my training has made me one of the king's horses and one of the king's men. And famously, we know that story, right? Humpty Dumpty, after toppling off the wall and cracking the egg, can never be put fully back together again. And that's how I felt. We were doing the best we could. Sometimes it was great. Yes, we saved lives. But we never really restored complete vitality in people who had advanced heart disease or diabetes or advanced lung disease. We were sort of patching them back up. So you can patch a crack in an eggshell, but you can never unscramble an egg. And I thought we've got to be able to do better. And you don't want people to get this far along in letting go of their health in the first place.
Right.
How do I get more involved in helping them, build it from the foundations up? And that's all about lifestyle, and that's all about prevention. So again, went on to train in preventive medicine, focused on diet and lifestyle my whole career, and how to leverage those to make a huge difference. And you asked, David, about sort of when the light switch went on. So I finished my training in preventive medicine at Yale in 1993, so 26 years ago. And that year, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, an article was published that I consider really the cornerstone of modern preventive and lifestyle medicine, with a very provocative title, Actual Causes of Death in the United States. So that, today that would qualify as clickbait, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a pretty provocative title, right? Except these guys meant it. So the two authors, Bill Foege, Mike McGinnis, essentially, they had done this massive epidemiologic project, and they said, all the stuff that shows up on death certificates as cause of death isn't. So, when someone dies of a heart attack, the cause of death on the death certificate, filled in by, somebody like me, a sleepy medical resident at 3 o'clock in the morning, would be atherosclerotic heart disease. But that tells you nothing, and what Foege and McGinnis asked was, what caused that? That's really just another description for the fact that this person died of heart disease. The heart disease is an effect, not a cause. What caused that? And the answer is overwhelmingly were lifestyle practices. So we knew 26 years ago that fully 80% of premature death and chronic disease could be prevented. And we still know it today and haven't done very much with that knowledge. And knowledge isn't power until you figure out how to put it to use. And that has been my crusade ever since.
And that's a great one, I'm telling you. I read your articles all the time on LinkedIn and other sources. And, I want to go back just for a second. And I enjoy those articles. I really do. And I study this all the time. So it's no great revelation to me. Everything I read, I go, yeah. But it is, but most people would not. Most people are kind of in their groove. They live their life. And when sickness comes along and strikes, it's like a mystery. Well, why did it happen? So when you say that, well, as a medical doctor, you're able to save some people, but you're never able to restore that vitality, I would argue that most of those people probably didn't have that vitality maybe since the time they were a kid, or maybe never at all because of their diet and their lifestyle.
Well, I think you're right, and I think you're also right about the fact that people do not realize that the master levers of medical destiny are in their hands, not their doctor's hands. Yeah, we tend to be a little fatalistic. We tend to be a bit passive. And the other thing we tend to do as human beings, and this is true about everything, it's true about our coronary arteries, it was true about the levees in New Orleans, it was true about the attic in Notre Dame Cathedral. We tend to get really upset in the aftermath of a catastrophe and don't think a lot about it until it happens, right? So, the person who's had a heart attack, who's now getting stents placed in their coronary arteries or needs their chest open for bypass surgery, they're extremely interested in what can I do that's good for my heart? What should I eat? And what more do I need? But, as a preventive medicine specialist, I don't want to wait that long.
Right.
I don't want the healing to come in the aftermath of calamity. But you're absolutely right. The problem is people, tend to be a bit fatalistic about all of this, and I don't think they realize how much power they have. And again, that's been part of my crusade my whole life. Do you realize that, absent the help of any doctor, you have the potential to reduce your risk of ever getting any major chronic disease, heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, dementia, all the bad stuff, by fully 80%. Imagine, David, if there were a pill to come out, approved by the FDA, available in bountiful supply, stunningly free of side effects, shockingly inexpensive, safe enough for children and octogenarians alike, and taken once daily for the rest of your life would reduce your risk of ever getting any major chronic disease, from cancer to dementia, by 80%. Everybody would want that stuff, right?
For sure, yeah.
Well, we have that. It's just not a pill. It's the lifestyle practices you control every day. So, absolutely, we've got to convey that message, and then we have to empower people to use it, and that calls for real invention. So it's not enough to say, hey, if you ate well, if you were active every day, if you slept enough, if you managed your stress, if you got this short list, if you didn't smoke, you got this short list of lifestyle practices right, you could reduce your risk of any chronic disease and premature death by 80%. Well, it's true, but that's just the what. What it leaves sort of dangling, as a question mark in the air is how. And that's where those of us who have careers in public health need to generate the inventions that empower people to get there from here. And that's a big part of the equation, too.
Right. So that segues us to one of the things I know you wanted to talk about today, which is your invention, the Diet ID product, which I think is a great product. I looked at it online and read about it and watched the demonstration, and it looks great. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Thank you. And to be clear, before we dive into Diet ID, one of many inventions that are coming along to empower people. It's a digital age. One of the great things about that is we can reach people anywhere, anytime. Almost everybody's got a smartphone, so whether it's an app or via the web, we can empower people in whole new ways. We have to take advantage of that. And there are lots of other really interesting technologies, including things like smart ovens. So you don't know how to cook? Okay, well, your oven knows how to cook now. Just, basically upload a recipe from your phone, push a button, and it will know how to cook. That's a product recently out from a company called Brava. So, I think we need lots of different inventions. But yes, thank you. Ours is really powerful, really important. And essentially what we have done at Diet ID, and people can go to dietid.com to learn more about this, we have made it effortless to know what your diet is now, to know what your diet ought to be based on your health goals, and then we built a whole new way to help you get there from here. And to put this in context so it's clear how important this is, right now, it's nearly impossible for the average person to know what their diet is. And by knowing what your diet is, I don't mean, I had French fries yesterday. I mean, overall, what is your diet type? What is the objective measure of your diet quality? Actually, there are formal scales for measuring diet quality overall, and those are the scales that predict what your diet is going to do to your overall health and your risk of premature death and your risk of chronic disease. And by the way, what nutrients are you getting from your diet? So, how much fiber do you get every day? How much calcium? How much potassium? How much sodium? How much added sugar? And the tools for assessing this, things like food diaries that you have to fill out for days on end, logging everything you eat, or food frequency questionnaires that generally take over an hour. How many times, David, in the past 6 months have you had marinara sauce? And by the way, what was the serving size each time? Nobody can remember that.
Right.
So this was a clear space where there was a lot of necessity. We need to know what people are eating if we want to improve it, waiting for invention. And so we invented a method that will give you all of that information, your diet type, your diet quality, all those nutrients, in under a minute. It's effortless. It's even fun. And what it's most like for anybody who's ever been to the eye doctor, if you go to the eye doctor and they're trying to figure out, whether you need corrective lenses and if so, what they should be, you don't fill out a 50-page questionnaire for an hour and try to remember exactly how you see at different times of day, different kinds of light. You look through a device. It's called a phoropter. And you see two images, and one is clear and one is blurry. And your job is to say which is the clearer of the two. I think everybody's probably done this. And then you say, okay, A is clearer than B. And they say, okay, how about now? And they show you two more images. And you say, okay, now B is clearer than A. Anyway, you do this 4 or 5 times. You've got an exact perfect match for your eyes. Well, working for the past several years with some of the world's leading nutrition experts advising us, we did that for diet. So we put together the world's first comprehensive map of diets that are consumed in the United States. Each one is a whole host of data at the back end. We know the nutrient levels, an exact measure of diet quality, but it's all turned into a library of images. And then what our app does is shows you 2 images at a time. We need to know a little bit about you to know which ones to show you, but that takes a few seconds. We show you 2 images and we say, okay, which of these looks more like stuff you eat? And you say that one. You say, okay, how about now? Now this one. Okay, how about now? Anyway, exactly the same process. 4 or 5 steps in, we've got pretty much an exact match for your dietary pattern. And within a few more seconds, get a little more information from you so we can quantify it. And we report it, okay, here's your Here's your calorie intake. Here's your diet type. Here's your diet quality. And here, by the way, are estimates of up to 150 nutrient levels. And this changes the game. And one more analogy I think will help, David. Imagine if we all knew that blood pressure was tremendously important to health, which, by the way, it is, and we all do know that. But we talked about it, we fussed about it. It was a topic of conversation, but we had no tool to measure it. We never measured it. So it's hugely important, but we don't know what anybody's blood pressure is.
Right.
Well, that's where we've been with diet. Diet ID fixes that.
That is really cool stuff. And, speaking from a clinical standpoint, I have patients that I work with every day on diet. And one of the hardest things for them to really get through their head, just to be clear on my end, I always try to nudge people toward a more plant-based diet, and a mostly plant-based diet if I can, because that's what I do, and I find that it's just been incredible in the results that I've gotten, especially blood pressure and cholesterol and triglycerides, and all the blood factors improve across the board, and I've yet to see it not go that way on a plant-based diet. That's why I lean on that. But so your product, to me, fits a nice niche, because a lot of these patients ask me, well, what should I eat? And it's so hard to sit down and come up. I don't want to give a menu, because then they're following a diet. And when they get to the end of that, they're going to go, I can't wait to have some French fries, or I can't wait to have this or that. And so that's where I see your product, that Diet ID product, I think is going to be phenomenal for helping people adapt to a better overall diet. And do it gradually. So my question for you on this, though, is, how is it that can you measure like a certain cutoff point where, okay, so you're helping them improve their diet. At this point, we know that diet is improving. We know that your health is improving. Because for me, it's an all or none thing, kind of. You can do much better when you make the complete change. And, a gradual change may bring on gradual improvement in blood work and things like that, but it's sometimes kind of hard to see. So is there...
Yeah, so there's a lot mixed up in the stuff you just said that's really important. So let's go back to the beginning of that, David. Michael Pollan famously got the truth about food. By the way, that's my latest book.
I love that book, by the way. Yeah, that's a great book.
And it's a 750-page book. So that, there's a lot to say, but most of it was helping people see past the lies about food, because the truth about food could be 7 words and they wouldn't even be mine. They'd be Michael Pollan's. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And he's absolutely right. Real food, plant predominant. So, every healthy diet is mostly made up of some combination, every healthy diet, of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds. And then, there are all sorts of variants on the theme. So you mentioned you guide your patients to plant-predominant diets. Yeah, everybody who's trying to produce lasting health needs to do that. But what those listening need to understand is, a plant-predominant diet could be a plant-exclusive diet. It could be vegan. It could include dairy and eggs and be vegetarian. It could include fish and be pescatarian. It could be Mediterranean. It could be low carb, because you can have a plant predominant approach to that if you're committed to it. It could be paleo. It can be anything. There are optimal plant predominant versions of a wide array of diets. And part of the power of Diet ID is to rise above the fractious bickering about diet and to rise above ideology and say, there are ways to make pretty much every kind of diet. Not quite every kind. Silly fad diets you can't fix. They're irredeemable.
Hey, David.
Pretty much.
Can I interrupt here just a sec? Can I hold you over? Or are you going to be around for the second half of the show?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I appreciate that. We got a break coming up, and I don't want to. This is a good place to maybe take a break. And so we'll be back in just a minute, folks, with Dr. David Katz, and he's going to tell us more about Diet ID and how to fix your health. Hang on just a few minutes. We'll be back.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Okay, no time for great music, but I'm going to bring Dr. Katz back on.
I hate to talk over Don Henley. Boys of Summer is an awesome song.
Oh my, that's one of my favorites. One of the songs I walk to. I probably have a dozen songs on my saved on my phone, and that's all I listen to when I walk. But
I hear the audience saying, "No, bring back Boys of Summer."
No. My audience is craving health. I'm telling you, they come here every Sunday. It's amazing. So you go ahead and get back to your point that you were making.
All right, yeah. So before the break, first of all, I commend you. You're guiding your patients to plant predominant diets, and then you made a number of interesting points. Including does it need to be all or none? Do you have to get to some particular diet to improve your health? So there's no question that you have to meaningfully improve the quality of your diet if you're counting on that to meaningfully improve the quality of your health. But we actually have a lot of large epidemiologic studies, and by large I mean in 100,000 people, showing that if you shift a quintile, so if you put diet quality in 5 tiers, a quintile would be moving up from whichever one you're in to the next one higher. 1 quintile translates into a meaningful reduction in the risk of heart disease, cancer a little bit less, but heart disease, diabetes especially, dementia, stroke, and cancer to some degree. So every little bit really can help, and yes, more would be better. So what we've done with Diet ID, which we were discussing before the break, is we've taken every kind of diet that's realistic for people of this part of the world, and we have stratified it into actually 10 tiers of quality. We use the same measure that was used in those epidemiologic studies. It's called the Healthy Eating Index 2015. It's the most robust measure of overall diet quality. And essentially what we say is, okay, we'll find your diet ID. And again, that in under a minute, we can have the details of your current diet. And then we say, okay, what are your health goals? Are you trying to manage diabetes, prevent diabetes, manage your blood pressure, lower your weight? What are the things that matter to you? And then we can recommend the diets that are ideal for that. But then we recognize, and we baked into this app, the fact that, we're not the boss of you. So, there may be the very top quality diet, David, that you're sort of referring to and probably helping your patients achieve. But maybe that's too restrictive. In particular, let's say, you're trying to improve the dietary pattern for your whole family. And you say, well, that looks great, but, it's a little too healthy for us. Right. Can I dial it down a notch or two? So, let's say your current diet quality is a 3 on a scale of 10. Well, if you got up to an 8, that would be fantastic. Right. It's a massive improvement, but it's not as restrictive as the 10, the very, very pinnacle. But you're the boss. So what we do with Diet ID is we say there are lots of different dietary patterns you can choose from. You're the boss. And there are many tiers of quality that are probably a whole lot better than what you're eating now, and you decide how far you want to go. And then, of course, the hope is, over time, you get really comfortable with a 7 or an 8. You've massively improved your diet and your health relative to where you started, and now you say, well, you know what? Now, all of a sudden, the 9 and the 10 don't look out of reach anymore. I want to keep going. And so that, there's the possibility of turning this into a journey that plays out over time, and every step you take improves your diet and improves your health. And then, the other thing I really wanted to emphasize again, because I do think this is crucial, probably the folks listening have heard so many competing opinions about which diet is best. And generally, when you hear, with absolute passion and conviction that my one recommendation is the best, you should step away from your credit card before you get hurt, right? And that's somebody just, trying to peddle something to you. The reality is, yes, everybody should eat real food. Everybody should eat mostly plants. But there are lots of variations on the theme of optimal eating, and they're all good, and you should be the boss. And when I say that, David, I want to make it abundantly clear that's not my personal opinion. It's a fact of epidemiology, and backing me up is a who's who in public health. I actually created a nonprofit organization called the True Health Initiative. People can learn more at truehealthinitiative.org. And our council of directors is literally 500 world-leading experts in public health and lifestyle medicine and preventive medicine and nutrition from 42 countries. And when I say a who's who, 3 former surgeons general of the United States, the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic, deans of schools, chairs of departments, leading nutrition writers like Mark Bittman, leading health journalists like Sanjay Gupta. It goes on and on and on. Famous chefs. experts in sustainability, and importantly, experts whose personal passions about diet range from paleo to vegan and span everything in between, and yet all of them are willing to stand up and be counted and say together, we agree about the fundamentals of a healthy diet. And it's exactly what we've been discussing, this basic theme. And again, I thought it was so important that the world know this is not a he said, she said. There's massive agreement. The science, the sense, and the consensus of experts all point in the same direction. And that's what the book, The Truth About Food, is all about. And by the way, all proceeds of that book go to support the True Health Initiative.
I heard you say in another interview that I listened to online, there was a young lady doctor interviewing you, and you said that very thing, and it struck me at the moment because we all like to be passionate about what we believe is true, and there's no question that it should be backed up by science. But I think sometimes what you see clinically with patients is kind of helps mold and guide, from a physician standpoint, somebody that's out in the field helps mold and guide your view of things, sometimes a little more accurately than, I know I'm treading on thin ice here, but sometimes a little more accurately than what some of the research supports. For instance, like with the cholesterol research that's out there, we all know it's good to lower your cholesterol and keep it lower and all. But then there is at least one study I'm aware of, and there's probably more, that demonstrates, I think it's a Norwegian study off the top of my head, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but where they demonstrated that actually women who had moderately higher cholesterol levels, total cholesterol levels, actually had fewer total mortality or overall mortality, all causes. And are you aware of that study? I think I have it here somewhere.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So first of all, I agree with you. And I've taken care of patients for 25 years before I've sort of moved in the direction of really just focusing on public health now. And I agree with you. Inevitably, the intimacy of that, the power of working one-on-one with someone, knowing their story so thoroughly, of course, it influences you. And, I don't know anybody who isn't, influenced by their own clinical experiences. And sometimes we denigrate those and call those just anecdotes. Well,
right.
Yeah, but an anecdote is what actually happens to the person you're taking care of. It's not an anecdote, it's a fact. And that does matter. But in order to have the deepest understanding, we want to look at what do we know from population studies, what do we know from intervention trials, how does that line up against my clinical experience, what is the clinical experience of my colleagues, and, you put it all together and you get the big picture. So, the simple fact is, David, and you know this well, total cholesterol is not a very informative figure in the first place, and a lot of premenopausal women, so relatively young women, have a very high HDL, and it's very protective. And so they have a very favorable ratio of their protective HDL cholesterol to the more concerning LDL cholesterol. And the other thing, of course, it gets more subtle than that. You know this. There are subfractions of both HDL and LDL, and they matter a lot, too. So what kind of HDL particles do you have? What size LDL particles do you have? And so I think, to some extent, the issue of is higher or lower better? Well, what higher or lower total cholesterol actually means varies with context. So in general, populations with higher cholesterol have more heart disease than populations with lower cholesterol.
Yeah.
But within that context, okay, who are we talking about and what does higher mean? And if higher cholesterol means more HDL and more of the protective stuff, then it may not be a problem at all.
Well, this is where using individual studies really kind of clouds the whole picture. And
essentially, yeah. And so what I was going to say is all roads lead to Rome. And what I mean is, there are certain subtleties that we doctors can debate. But, for folks listening, in general, you are going to massively reduce your risk of heart disease and maybe even eliminate it if your blood pressure is normal, if you're fit, if you don't have a lot of extra body fat, if you avoid tobacco, if you eat an optimal diet of real food, mostly plants. The short list of things that you need to do to massively shift your risk of heart disease down is very clear. And then, exactly how is that affecting your overall lipid panel? And it may interact with your genes. It will interact with your sex. It will interact with your age. There's some subtleties in the mix there. But I'm sure we agree with considerable confidence that the basic shift in lifestyle practices that's going to reduce the risk of heart disease is perfectly clear. And by the way, in terms of cholesterol, I know you're familiar with the work of Dr. David Jenkins, University of Toronto.
Yes.
He invented the glycemic index. But he also invented the portfolio diet. And this was a whole sequence of studies he's run out of his lab over many years, published in the most prestigious journals, showing that you can actually use diet to lower cholesterol when you need to as effectively as the best drugs we've got, as effectively as statin drugs.
I agree with that, and his work is some of the first work that I read on cholesterol when I found out my cholesterol was high. I didn't particularly care for some of the foods that he used in the diet.
And by the way, neither does he. He's a great guy, and he, by the way, is vegan and has a great diet. But in the portfolio diet studies, they were aiming for 75 grams of fiber a day, and David and colleagues. And by the way, Dr. Jenkins is an advisor to Diet ID, so I'm privileged to work closely with him.
Yeah.
But he and colleagues, are the first to admit we were proving a point. We were showing that, you can get diet.
Right.
Absolutely, to be medicine. Food is medicine. Now, whether or not you want to go quite this far is another story. And yeah, right, you may not want to consume quite that much fiber every day. Maybe you don't have quite that much time to be spending in the bathroom, right? So there's some adjustments you may want to make.
Well, and it is true, and there's an adjustment overall. So I like the Diet ID concept of even maybe gradually moving people toward a more ideal diet. I'm kind of an all or none guy. I like to push myself to the limit and see what the improvement is overall that I can gather. And the cholesterol thing started out to be my major focus, but then I noticed that there are so many blood factors that improve with a better diet, and exercise doubles that, and exercise is a huge part of it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So, cholesterol is important, but you're right. I mean, there are a lot of cardiac risk factors, and when you really get the formula right, you fix them all.
Right.
And that's huge.
I think there are a lot of...
By the way,
go ahead.
David, just to be clear about Diet ID. So, again, our idea is we want to empower everybody to be able to improve their diet. And a lot of people do prefer that incremental approach. But there's nothing in our system that precludes you saying, hey, I just want to jump in with both feet and be there tomorrow. I want to be perfect, and I want to do it it.
Right.
It's a little crazy, but okay.
Yeah, well, it's all or none.
Okay, your current diet is a tier 2, and yeah, you want to be tier 10 tomorrow? Sure. And by the way, the other thing the system does, you can track the change in your diet at any frequency you want. So, if you radically overhauled your diet, today, and you wanted to reassess it this time tomorrow or in 2 days, you could do that again in under a minute. You could compare where you are 2 days from now to where you were 2 days ago.
Right.
Look at the exact changes you've made in nutrients and diet quality. So, yeah, we could, even somebody as crazy as you, we could help you do that too.
So how can folks, or is this available for people to try or to use?
So we are currently licensing this to health professionals.
Okay.
So people can check it out, learn about it. If they're interested in it, what I'd recommend they do, certainly, via the website, dietid.com, people can write into my team, get more information. You can even tell us, hey, we want this in the App Store. I mean, if we hear that enough times, we'll revisit that and maybe put it in the App Store. But for now, along with getting more information from us, you can tell your health professional, hey, I heard about this thing. It's really cool. I would love to be able to access it here. And that would be the idea, is that we would license. You don't have to pay for it. We actually want to put this into your doctor's office, or if you see a dietitian or a health coach, they should have it. Mm-hmm. And you should be able to access it there. And then you get the dual advantages of, I've got this app, and it's telling me what my diet is and exactly what my diet ought to be and exactly how to get there from here. And I'm doing that in the context with, a professional who can also contribute to that journey. And we think that's most powerful.
I love that because nothing is more powerful than when patients can see numbers improve. And that gives them a sense of, I knew I was feeling better, but wow, this is great, when you actually see the numbers improve. And I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, no, knowledge is power. And yeah, exactly. And it sort of becomes the why, right? So, I made adjustments to my diet. Here's what it did to my diet quality. Here's what it did to nutrients. And here's how that's translating into what's happening to my blood pressure, what's happening to my HDL, what's happening to my LDL, what's happening to my inflammatory markers, what's happening to my measures of blood sugar and insulin. And that's huge. Now all of a sudden you've got a complete story. You've got cause and effect, and you become the master of both. And then you're where you ought to be. Right. You ought to be in charge of your medical destiny. And by the way, David, one thing we ought to throw in here before we run out of time, we got very, very excited at the dawn of the genomic age, thinking genes are destiny, DNA is destiny. And we got too carried away, and then we learned the hard lesson that, we really can't do all that much with our genes. We don't have the science to alter our genes. But thankfully, we were wrong. DNA is not destiny. Dinner is. I mean, there are rare exceptions, right? Sickle cell disease and Huntington's disease, that are truly genetic diseases. But what we've learned in the decade and a half since we got all excited about genomics is what's actually even more powerful is the epigenome. 95% of the real estate in our chromosomes isn't genes. It's the levers and switches that tell our genes what to do. That's the epigenome, and lifestyle changes the settings of those levers and switches, and it can do it at any time in your life.
Exactly.
It's hugely powerful, turning genes up and down, on and off.
David, we've got to go. You're amazing, man.
Okay.
Thanks so much for being on. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again.
Okay. My pleasure.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Okay, we're back just for a few minutes, and sorry to have to let Dr. Katz go that way. Dang, it's just like I think I got through 10% of the material I wanted to cover with him, but he did talk about Diet ID, which I think is a phenomenal product and will eventually be something that I think many people will be using themselves by the sound of it, but you can probably get it through your doctor or check it out and look at the technology. I think it's going to be something that we can all use to improve our diets. Well, I can't because I'm already eating a really great diet. But you can do that too, folks. And the truth of the matter is technology is a great thing to use, and that probably will help a large number of people to move from where they are to where they need to be dietarily. And like Dr. Katz said, you may not need to be perfect. And we don't really exactly know how that rheostat of diet changes your health. You know what I'm saying about a rheostat? Like a light switch that you can turn the light up and down. Well, you kind of can do that with diet too. If you add just a little broccoli to every meal, you're probably going to be slightly healthier. But if you make broccoli the center part of your meal and some grains and you leave out the meats, well, then that's like turn that rheostat all the way up to full bore. And you got bright lights at that point. And I'm telling you, health is like that. It's like you turn that rheostat on, all of a sudden everything looks brighter to you. Your vision actually improves, truly. And I am not selling you anything here, so I'm just relating to you what I've discovered. My vision's improved. I'm 60 years old. I used to need glasses to pass my driver's test. I can read even down to the finest print sometimes, unless these people that make the labels print tan letters on tan background, and it drives me crazy. But, I can read most things now where I couldn't before. All aspects of health improve. But great guy, Dr. David Katz. If you want to read more about Dr. Katz, look up David Katz, it's KATZMD.com. And you can look up more information about him and read about him. He's a fine gentleman, and the second time he's been on here, and I greatly appreciate it. That guy's really busy, and he takes time out to come here and help you all be healthier. That's phenomenal. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do this week? You going to sit back and wait for sickness to strike? Or are you going to start making some change? Because truly, sickness will find you eventually if you keep living the way you are and eating the way most Americans do. You need to improve that, folks. And it doesn't take, you don't have to be like me and go off the deep end. But I like to see how far I can push that envelope. I like to see how healthy I can become. And I'm telling you that when you start down that path, that will become a motivation for you. This is Dr. David Vitko. You're listening to Enjoy Incredible Health, and I'll be back next week, folks. Take care.